wise man once said, to forget how to dig the soil, tend the earth, is to forget ourselves. Well, maybe some have, but a few of us still know. You gotta be willing to put in the time, make the sacrifices, and the hard choices. The job's got its perks, don't get me wrong. The sweet smell of the morning dew, the way the warm sun and the cool breeze can dance across your skin. But don't think it's a game. The farm's got a way of sorting the wheat from the chaff. Just remember to keep your wits about you. You fall, you get back up again. Because this is more than just a job. It's a calling. Who else would choose to wake up early in the morning, tear up their hands working in the fields all day, and then spend the evening planning how they're gonna do it all over again, better, tomorrow? Day after day. Season after season. Year after year. That's a calling that's never ending. It stretches far forward and back from us as long as farmers have been tending this earth. And farmers will be around as long as such a thing exists. Tomorrow is secured by those willing to dirty their hands today. So when you feel alone out there in the field, just remember, you're not. Think about all those that have come before you. And all those that'll follow. Plant today. Harvest tomorrow.
All right, we're going to get started with, here we are, Farming Simulator 22. Going down the career path. Going to be starting a new, start from scratch. I'm Matt Benjamin, I'm the narrator. We're doing Mars, the mission. There were several versions of this. This was the first. I decided to keep it in the episode so you can see all the folly. So for those of you wanting to use this map in FS22, you can see all the problems that we had. And then I left them in the recording, so and how we overcame them. What we had to do. But when I first came on the map, I was trying to just get my bearings. And I actually played quite a bit. And the only problem that we ran into was with the certain vehicles that weren't of the I guess, I don't know the right way to explain this. After researching on Grok, I realized that there were several different versions of this map. I guess they had beta testers, and it's been refined. And so all the problems that they had with the animations that they have on that map, they decided to put all their own stuff in there. So when you load up the map, even under starting with scratch, a lot of the stuff is preloaded with the DLC pack. And so I didn't know that when I first did the recording, so I decided to make a Mars-based beta, colony beta, a version 2, which we made on its own independent farm so we could test it, see how it worked out, and that's what the later recording, when we get into the later part of the episode. Now, this is all going to be under episode 1, but we're going to have different parts. Each part is about an hour or so, roughly. And then the first 2 hours is just us kind of getting fancy with it, and then realizing what didn't work, and then I went and ate dinner and came back, and then I worked on it some more, well into later in the evening. Once we made column B, I got a lot of play, but I'm gonna try to keep each episode down to an hour. Well, the episode itself is quite long, but the play tracks are only an hour, so there will be different parts to each episode. The idea is it's going to be kind of a journal. There I am. That's my guy. That's me. Cyber me. And so one of the cool things here, we're internet farmers. We're not real farmers. But you can kind of see all the problems you have as an internet farmer. You have to deal with the computer. First, you have to deal with people that made the game, people that mod the game. Then you have to deal with Microsoft, and then you got to deal with every other folly along the way. So, last couple days I've had sound issues. For some reason, my monocaster light board doesn't show up in my Microsoft stuff anymore. Well, half of it does, half of it doesn't. So, I don't know why. We'll find out. So, I'm having to record this on a separate track. The voiceover is separately, so you have to turn the sound down so it doesn't get double recorded or it doesn't sound like an echo. We've changed out our mics recently, so the filtering isn't as good. All the filtering has to be done in post-production. So if the guy comes by on his motorcycle, we're going to filter that out as best we can. So this is Mars-based hose 1, named after the famous hose. If you can watch, I do the Texas tank watchers, and along the way, SpaceX was doing a test on a static fire, and rocket had an accidental eruption, we'll say, and the hose died, and everybody promised that they'll build a statue of it one day when the Mars colony is up and running. So that we kept that idea going. So we named the base after the hose that died in the cone, Harambe, and so forth. Mission to Mars. Now, some of the things I didn't like about the thing, not in a way that I don't want to play it, but I don't like that they made it a big competition, that you got to get everything done in 20 years. I think that's silly. Right? The point of farming is you're providing food and agriculture and a lot of materials that people are going to need to do other stuff. Believe it or not, a lot of materials used in the modern world come from agriculture, horticulture. And if you think of it, oil is part of agriculture. It comes from the ground. Right? So you're essentially farming it out of the ground. Right. So I don't really see why they put a time limit on it. Or like made it a competition, because it's unnecessary. So when we get into the B track here, I turned off all that stuff. Well, if you think about it, you're on Mars, you got a limited production. All your energy has to go to keeping the plant being the entire outpost, right? Yeah, keeping the plant alive, and so you got it, all that electricity and power has to go to producing oxygen and heat, right? Right. So, on top of that, you got to build a lot of microorganisms, and they take time. You can't just go out there, throw stuff in the ground, and it's going to grow. So part of the process of farming, even in Farm Sims 22, and even going back to Farm Sims 19, that's when I started playing Farm Sims on the console. And then now I'm on the PC, but making the loom from scratch takes time, generation, and you just can't go throw a plant in the ground because you can only have that crop in the ground for one season, and then you got to rotate it to another crop, or the ground will become sterile for that plant. Animals are sort of the same way. They eventually become sterile. You see this where there's overpopulation of people. And diet, the body adapts as an environment, adapts to the environment. And so, where you have populations of 2 billion people, like in China, India, starting to see sterilization of the organism, where a large portion are female, and the male is way smaller, proportionate to the female birth rate. That's a natural phenomenon. But plants have that same sort of pathology. So I think it takes all the fun out of doing the Mars thing, because it makes it all about get in a hurry and do it now versus take your time. And one of the things I didn't like with the map is the fields are all tiny, right? That's not enough plants to sustain this dome right here. That's not enough field to sustain a town, let alone a city. And the time factor, it takes about 6 years to get a farm going, roughly. Yes, if you do everything right and the weather's perfect, and the weather isn't perfect here because it's all artificial. Sunlight's the only thing that's natural, so it's good for the plant. I don't know how sunlight affects plant growth further away. But Mars is further away than Earth, so I don't know how that radiation, heat-wise, is different. Imagine it's a lesser amount of radiation on Mars than there is on Earth. Proportional. And, so a lot of unknowns there, and I think these fields are too tiny for what would have to do. So it's really fictional. And so yeah, when I first came on here, I didn't know where I was going. I was just running around trying to, what's this over here? What's that over there? Looking at the fields, all the fields are the same size, they're tiny. Now, when I play my farm, I simulate both in Farm Sims 19 and 22. It's a Georgia farm, which that's about 300 acres. It's usually about a small family farm with 5-6 people, right? And that's a tiny, in the United States, that's a tiny farm. That's like not even a blip on the map. Here they're like them big commercial farmers. They're running like thousands of acres, right? The one field is like 100 acres, right? 200-300 acres. There's a 300-acre farm, and the biggest field you have is about 30 acres, right? So these fields are tiny. They're not even 10, 12 acres big. So that's the main problem. But assuming one of the things I didn't like about the map is the developer of the map, he's already set in the motion like how he likes to play, and like it made everything that's totally unnecessary to the farming part of it. That's the bottom line of the thing, which is absurd. I think kind of silly. Um, whatever plant you can grow, you should be able to grow, and you shouldn't like. Well, you got to have 20,000, 200,000 liters of timber produced by 20 years. That's absurd. Because you want to terraform in 20 years is really impossible. Right. You're not going to change the environment in 20 years. Life tends to go in 25-year cycles, which are called jubilees. And families and generations go in 25. So usually 3 generations of family. A generation is 20 years, roughly. So, like, say you're born in 1950, your cohorts would be in the decade of the 1950s. Then you're all teenagers in the 1960s, right? So then if you have a brother or a sister that's born in the 1960s, their generation is within that 20 year, 1960, 1970. Whereas the previous generation is 1950, 1960, that 20 years is usually a generation. So as generations grow, they're typically 25 years, right? And then 50 years is your diamond jubilee, 50 years, and then 75, right? And then 100, and then 125 is the, well, if you believe in biblical stuff, then God gives you 120 years to repent, right? So it's about as far as a modern human can go. So 20 years, that's impossible to terraform Mars. Even this lot, you're never going to get that terraform. Just because you're growing plants on there isn't terraforming. Terraforming requires the environment will start recycling itself. Right? And that's going to be kind of difficult because Mars is very dry, very cold. So even if you're heating the ground, you don't know how long ground like that's going to take to heat. It could take 20 years for it to heat. And to give you a perspective on that, when they pour the concrete in the Hoover Dam, if they let that naturally cool, it would have took thousands of years for the concrete to cure. So they had to artificially cool it with cooling rods. And even that process, they poured it, in the 1930s? It was still curing all the way to the mid-1980s, right? So, that's a long time. Long time. It's still curing. Right? So, and that's a lot of energy that they're going to have to produce over a large scale all the time. So I think the cars are kind of silly. Why would you waste all that energy on traffic? You want the people to naturally survive, right? So every ounce of energy you're going to have is going to be the growing stuff. That's the interesting part that I want to put a role play in this. Okay, so they've set the fields. Say there's an engineer on the project. He's not really a farmer. He's a terrible civil engineer. Probably a mechanical engineer who thinks he knows everything. I'm just making up that part. That's the fictional part. But that's usually what happens. But I'm gonna get hot and heavy into the story when we get into the bee colony. Everything seemed to go right. Well, it was suggested on Grok to deselect all your mods and slowly bring them up. So that's why I made a bee farm. Turned everything off and brought everything on. Now, Courseplay worked, and Auto Drive worked, but Case IH tractors were having problems. Most of them are modded tractors. Now, the ones that I use that are part of the DLC, they all work, which are in part B of the story. But in the A production here, all the Case IH tractors had problems, and you couldn't get out of the car. You know, the way we're going to play it in fiction is we're going to say there was supposedly the sensor detected an air leak, and when that does, it locks you in your car. It won't allow you to get out because of the oxygen in the car. That'll be how we'll describe it in fiction. So when that occurs in the story, that's what will happen. It's an emergency situation. Because if you're living in this kind of environment, right, where you have a piece of glass holding the atmosphere in, and that glass escapes for any reason, you're going to have to practice these drills all the time. So they'll have like practice drills where you don't know it's coming. Air leak, air leak. So you get trapped in your tractor. So that's how we're playing it out in the story. The computer glitch. Kind of like in our Georgia farm where you can't do certain things because the program's limited. So we call that the county ordinance and trading ordinance. Contract laws are strict. An example of that is like if you're baling grass on the farm contract, and if you go do your farm, you can just go grab a forage wagon, just pick up all the grass, go dump it in a silo, right? And then just take the grass when you need it, go dump it in another silo and make silage out of it. I don't like the wrapping method at all. It's so labor intensive. The amount of labor you have to do it, and the amount that you get out of it is not economically sound. Right? So, but the game doesn't allow you to do that because how it works is that's someone else's farm, and so it's security that you just can't just go grab grass off of someone's lot like that, right? So that's how we're playing out in the story, that the Georgia laws on contractual laws are very strict. Usage laws. Usually usury laws deal with credit. Like if you charge someone 5%, you can't just overnight 21%. That's a usury law violation. And that's going to federal prison. That kind of stuff. But here I am trying to find the door. Came up to this big igloo. I'm trying to find a door. Doing my redneck stuff. I'm a Florida redneck. They sent a Florida redneck to Mars because all the engineers screwed up the farming. They don't know how to farm. They didn't learn that in college. So they sent a real farmer to Mars to tell it how it is. Yeah. Big difference between gardening and farming. Huge difference. Gardening is like a microcosm of farming. Running around. I thought the door would be up there in the front of the building. It was. I just couldn't figure out how to get it to work. So started using my head. That's why it took so long. how I eventually figured out how the door worked was really an accident. I just happened to got really close to the door and noticed the button changed. Oh, look, here's a B button. Now, the way I like to farm in Farming Simulator 22 is I take my time. I do a 28-day cycle. Set it on real time. And then I only advance the time when I go to sleep. So, how that works out in reality, I farm for a couple hours, sometimes an hour. If I'm streaming, generally do it an hour. And then break it up in a couple of different streams. But in the series on YouTube, you can get an hour and then get 2-3 jobs in, plus tending with the horses takes time. And then you generally get 1-2 big jobs in a day, and then you sleep at night. Tends to speed the time up. If you're raising animals, it's hard to do those quick one game session in a month or a year. All your animals will die. Yeah. Now, the purpose of the game is to simulate farming, not stimulate production. I love all the production stuff. I love all the stuff that they added into with cultivating. That's all that's cool. And I think the production is the fantastic part. That direction that the game is going in, I encourage it. But I like it that they gave people an option if you want to play really slow or really fast. I'd rather play really slow and take my time. One thing I learned from Farm Sims 1922 was when I migrated over to the PC was that you didn't have to delete your farm. You get the mod assistant. That'll keep track of all your mods. And then you only have to load that up from 19 to 22. Right. It was very simple. I didn't know that. So I deleted my farm from Farm Sims because it was on the council. And I wanted to remake the farm, so sometime in 2025, I'm going to sit down and we're going to remake that farm. In Farm Sims 19, we'll call it Nostalgic Farming Simulator. Farming Simulator. I started playing at 19, so those of you that were around in the 17 and 15 years, I saw them playing the 16-bit Farming Simulator today. That was kind of fun. It's like Farmville. Okay, so right now I'm running around, but I'm trying to get a sense of how to set up the auto drive routes. And when I set up auto drive, I like setting up a fixed route in small circuits, and then I connect them all together. And, this thing is built in a big circle. So in the bee colony, we turn off all the cars and stuff. Most people do that. I mainly play on the Fox Farm map. That's what I use to simulate Georgia. Excuse me. Yeah, it works out fairly well for our needs. And then laying out the roads on there's no traffic on there, so it was far easy to lay out the road. Very simple road pattern. And I like putting in all that stuff early. This is my favorite tractor, the 1455 Case IH. I'm a Case IH guy. So all those other tractors aren't really... I use the New Holland tractors mainly because they're the only ones that can do grape and olives. But I like this tractor, but it had a problem with the map. I don't know why it had a problem with it. I like that we can manage our license plate So, AAG is AGG is Agamemnon Games. AG Games. Say my name wrong on YouTube. They say a game. All kinds of ways. It's Agamemnon. He was the king of Greece during the Trojan War and the Iliad and the Odyssey. I don't like those European style plates. They got the wrong number. I like American license plates. They're simple. Right. Simple and easy. That's all you need. Gotta make sure you turn the GPS on. That mod did work. Now, on this one, I just loaded up all my mods, not knowing what would and wouldn't work, and until I ran into a problem. And that's when I started doing it the other way. One of the things in Farm Sims 22, if you're new to it, people love their mods for whatever reason. They make life so easy. So easy. They put the spawn yard over here. Call it the, I refer to it as the assembly yard. Those big doors are pretty nice. We had them. I was on an aircraft carrier for 5 years. We had those big doors, glass doors. But general rule of thumb is when you need them to work, that's when they break down. If a rupture occurs in one of the glass, so that door will break down that day. Well, here I am. I'm looking at. I bought this plot of land. It's close to the store. I plan to work going just west on the map. So kind of thinking that I want to try to see. One, did the tractor work, and also does courseplay work? So here I am turning on courseplay and auto drive. I'm not an aficionado on courseplay or auto drive. I've gotten better at auto drive because I use it a lot, but I keep myself simple. Gotta over complex it. But courseplay I'm getting more familiar with on the combine. Now, since these fields are tiny, I decided to play around with courseplay, but that's more when we get to the bee colony. Now, I saw a couple other series like these with the Mars colony, so the way I'm going to do it in story is roleplay is they're another colony on Mars. We're a colony. They sent us real farmers out there to help these guys, prevent them from starving. If I could tie this in with Kerbal Space Program, I would. You could link these together. That would be awesome. So then you would actually take the 2-year journey. It's actually a 6-month journey from Mars to Earth and Earth to Mars and Mars to Earth if you hit the right window, which is every 2 years. But you got to have like 1,000 ships ready to move over. You can't just leave, right? So once the window closes, you're there for 2 years before you can go another cycle, right? So roleplay that they probably have all different kind of colonies. The word colony is Latin, and what it means is farm. In the older world, everybody was built on agriculture and horticulture. Horticulture is everything other than flat field farming. That's agriculture. So if you're farming on the side of the mountain, that's horticulture. If you're farming inside a building, that's horticulture. Like a glass dome. Technically we're horticulturing because we're under a glass dome. But the field is flat. If you're farming in a glass building, that's horticulture. Trying to find my government sign here. I would encourage that you put the government subsidy. There are two of them. There's the one from the federal government, one from the municipality. And that would be normal. An operation like this, individual couldn't fund it. You don't need government subsidies because from Earth and the local farms here, so that you got to keep the farmer alive. Got to be able to eat and survive. They're the ones growing all the food. So keep going on. Now there's stuff specifically in this game. You see all Mars colony yep. Here's the sign. Those first things you need to plot. So I was finding a nice spot I could put it on that I wouldn't hit with the harvester. Now, the problem here is they bring you in August and they're growing beet. Right? So I may not even be able to harvest it. So I'm trying to put it close to the edge of the field. That's where you drive on, the route path. Won't destroy the crops. Now, for the most part, I like playing with crop destruction with realism, but when I'm laying out the field for the computer stuff, sometimes I turn it off. Especially in the early parts of this, we were experimenting to see what would work with the map and didn't work with the map. So, that's where we're at. Problem with an electric harvester, they don't produce enough power. Okay, so here we are, we're laying down. I picked this building because it was primitive. It was like the old West. You're going to have very meager living, so I made a little wooden cabin with all the features. How pioneers would have lived. Reality. 4 walls and a door. All you need. And a toilet. Outhouse. Our outhouse is in the house. Everything is going great here, and this is where we came up with our first encounter. Our lead project engineer told us he didn't consider these emergency air leaks problem. And, got locked in the tractor, couldn't get out. The security feature. I like that they added the Mars soil. It's kind of nice. Problem is the lots are cheap, and then the area, if you buy it, is super expensive. A lot of map, the main part between the fields is usually cheap. Because you're going to have to build that if you're going to expand roads and stuff, especially if you're the only one on the map. Sometimes they plot these maps out thinking that they're 100 people are gonna be playing on them. For the most part, 1 or 2 people are gonna play. Right. Not everybody plays in teams. Yeah, I got this all set up. It's looking pretty, and then I had to get rid of it all. Technically made a new map. But when we get into the B part of the episode, I'm thinking of just making that episode 2. But I went on and see what the harvester was like. The fields aren't the problem I had with the course play was, excuse me. The problem I had was that the fields aren't all that big, so you're pretty much the one running the auger wagon back and forth. You just have to program the combine to just drive a basic course, and then you just have to go where he goes, empty the pack, or pause the course play, let the guy take a break, and then just drive up and grab the material. It seemed the most efficient way to do it, rather than having stuff still all over the field. I'm sure once we get going, we'll find a better way to do that. Now, what I do in real life, in my farm, I don't do that. I just go somewhere near the field. I put a silo, and then I just have the auger wagon, the gopher, go and grab the straw or whatever crop that's there, and then just drive that to the semi, and then just go have the semi drop it in the silo, right? And then go figure out afterwards what you want to do with the material, because you just need to get it off the field into the silo so the elements don't destroy it, and then you can go grab all the straw, throw that in the silo, and then bale it separately. They make that Pottinger baler has a wrapping function that you can turn off and on. So, and it can be fed by an auger or conveyor belts, and then you just have that. If you want to make the wrap silage, that's fine. But I normally don't do that. I normally make my silage in a big batch. Because you're gonna make, they want you to make 700 some odd cattle, right? Take 8-9 months to raise the cattle. Then you gotta wait for them to get pregnant, right? That's gonna take another year, and you don't know what they're gonna have. And your cows only last 6 years, like chickens. So the male are pretty much for consumption. So that in itself will take a long time to generate and regenerate. So even at the span of 5 years, if you built them in bulk, you could do that. But if you're building something on Mars, you're not going to ship 500 heads of cattle. Yeah, right. It would defeat the purpose of farming. Right? The cattle price of the beef would be like millions of dollars, right? Because it's fly from Earth to Mars and back, right? Super expensive. to begin with. Well, SpaceX is gonna do it for about $10 million. Right? They can only shoot 100 tons of mass to orbit, right? So 100 tons is not a lot of cattle, right? So, yeah, so 1,500 pound cattle moves with half ton, right? And plus, they're gonna grow in 6 months to 2 years. So if they leave Earth a calf, they're gonna get there if they go the 2-year route. It's gonna take them be full grown. The limousines, they're like what, 3,500 pounds? pretty big. Over a ton. And the environment's lighter on Mars, so the cattle might grow bigger, right? Because the atmosphere is thinner and the gravity is lighter, so they might grow larger. Because the animals tend to grow to their environment. So you don't know if the ones coming from Earth will acclimate to the Martian climate, even if it's artificial. That might be difficult. At least for the first generation or so. For 20 years, that's like only 1 or 2 generations cattlemen. I think the 10th generation cattleman that he's been raising, their family's been raising cattle, what, 150 years? 10 generations. So you only got 20 years to do it, so that's not even a generation. So minus 5 years, generation. So cows and beef grow probably the same amount of time that a human does in terms of their gestation period. And then they have to have the pregnancy, and then the only time you're going to get milk is if the cow's pregnant. Right? So after they have pregnancy, they only have milk for a short period of time. Unless you want to artificially inseminate them, which I don't really like that. A lot of people do it, but I don't really do that. Yeah, so people are going to have milk. You can get from sheep and goat. Sheep and goat are the same type of animal. Cousin. They essentially eat grass. You gotta grow enough grass. That takes a year to grow the grass, and then another year to grow the young. When the pigs have 2 gestation periods, the amount of growing season. It's going to consume twice the amount of food. So how I set up my farms is I normally get the fields all conditioned. But usually when you get the fields suck. So you got to condition them so that you get a high yield. Then you got to rotate the crop. Figure all that out. And then you got to grow grass initially. And you got to grow canola. wheat and barley, and then oats. Need the oats for the horses. The horses eat hay, so that requires grass. And got a cough in. But I'm not ill. I just got a cough. Is psychological. I'm hyperactive, and the weather's been changing here a lot, and the shift in temperature causes my body to adjust. So, like, I have psoriasis too. So, my body gets, I don't want to say stressed out. It can be a low amount of stress or high amount of stress. My body hyperactive takes over. How I ended up with a cough is, well, it happened a couple years ago, but I think it happened when it was cold here a couple of weeks ago, and I think it went from a wet, sort of humid climate to a very dry climate, and I think I damaged my throat, and then because it was sore for a couple of days, and then it healed up, and then I'm 4 weeks past that now, and my neck feels a lot better. I'm not really coughing all that much, but when I have like a temperature inversion, it goes from hot to cold, cold to hot, or dry to wet, like humid. I live in Florida, and I get like coughing spells. I get sneezing spells too, like if the temperature drops like below 75 degrees, and my body temperature settled in, I'll start to sneeze. That's how I know what the temperature is. and then the cough is similar, where my lungs start breathing in that dry air. I start, especially if it's cold and dry, tend to go together. I start coughing, and then it goes away. I have to relax. Mine's more of a more mental than physical. But this day and age, you start coughing, people think you got a respiratory infection. You gotta go run around the corner. You get like a coughing fit. You don't think you're contagious. My lungs are fine. I had pneumonia when I was a little kid, so I know like what my lungs should feel like if I had a respiratory infection. Very unique. I had pneumonia in my lungs for like, I couldn't stop coughing, and my lungs felt heavy. I don't quite know how to describe it, but very hot. I can feel like a lot of heat, and I couldn't stop coughing. So I'm very familiar with that. But yeah, my lungs are fine. My throat's fine. My sinuses are fine. Sometimes I get migraines when the temperature drops below 75, especially if it goes really fast. But it goes from like a 90-degree day, and all of a sudden it drops below 75. I'll get migraine, which is part of all this. My cough is like a hiccup, kind of. Feels like more like a hiccup than a cough. Because my lungs aren't like clearing out. They're just, I guess you're trying to dry out my throat. Something like that. Anyway, so I tried a couple different things. The game locked up there. See that? What happened is I was in the tractor, I was working, and then I was trying to figure out all kinds of different ways to change it, but the only way I could get out of it was to just go in the task manager, to go over to Steam and just quit out of the game that way. But you could save the game though, so I don't know if that's a fault. It feels more like a glitch, something that allows you to get out of the vehicle on some of the modded trucks doesn't carry over, I guess, when they mod this map. I don't know how that works. But some vehicles it works, some it doesn't, so it's a hit or miss. So it has to be I think it's part of, I'm going to call it the security system of the game, and allows for certain things to be there, certain things not to be there, and where they're at, they're allowed to do certain destructive things to the field, like repaint it, regrow it, plant it. If you think of Farm Simulator, it's really just a painting game, right? Think of paint shop. Really all you're doing is just painting. So that's probably what the computer actually sees, but to make it look like you're digging the ground, putting crops in and all that. I'll call it a destructive sequence to the ground, right? You're manipulating it. They gotta allow you to do a certain thing or control a certain thing. It's probably when you get in and out of the tractor that you're in one environment to another environment. So the character in the game is like a vehicle themselves. So it gets stuck. Right, why the game locks up. But it locks up in a way that you can still save it, which is kind of good. For a story element, we're saying that this is as we were working on the field, we got emergency evacuation in place. You know, like back when I was growing up in the Cold War, they had practice drill. We did it early. When I remember in kindergarten, we had to do practice drill because we did it on the Air Force Base, Maxwell Air Force Base, which is the headquarters of the Air Force. They did all the, in case of a nuclear attack, you had to go practice that. But they combined it in with tornado stuff. I remember one time when I was in Alabama in kindergarten, we had to go to the center of the building because a hurricane came through there. Not a hurricane, but a tornado came through there. But I started school in Alabama because we were traveling a lot those days and came back to Florida. I spent most of my life. But if it looks like the graphics are locked up there, they are. I was trying all kinds of different things. And I was looking up on Grok. I found Grok on X to be useful in troubleshooting, especially questions about OBS Studio, recent changes to games. It seems very knowledgeable with those kind of things. Questions about Linux, Windows. It seems very knowledgeable. Yeah, that's what I've been doing. So, coming up on the end of this reel here. Since this is an hour, we're going to go ahead and call this episode 1 when it gets to YouTube. When I originally laid these out, I wasn't going to... I wanted this to be episode 1 and then have a bunch of parts. I wanted to keep each sequence down to about an hour. But that's not really how people play Farm Sim. So how to market it to people on YouTube, and at the same time, people on the stream get to see you play over a couple of hours. So how to make that a reality. The recorded video is difficult. So that's how we decided to do it. We'll make every clip an hour long, and then roughly. And then we're going to call them episode 1, episode 2, episode 3. so it's like a journal. I saw a couple other videos on this. Uh, I guess they edited out all the hardship, but that's why we're living on Mars. You know, not every day is gonna be the spectacular one. Alien. We are the alien. Ever watch the movie Alien? And Alien, what people miss. You really look at the film. The humans are the aliens in the movie. They're the ones going to a foreign place. Technically, the other creatures an alien too, because they weren't originally from that planet. Migrated there. We just happened to stumble on them. The humans in the, what do they call them, xenophobe, are both aliens. It's been thrown out that xenophobe word around. It's kind of dumb. Something to be a phobia, at least in psychology. It has to prevent you from living out a normal life, right? If someone is afraid of you or has a fear of you, fear is a real condition in the environment. Whether it's in their head or not, it's a real fear. It's a short-term thing. So a phobia has to prevent you from living out a normal life. Like, if you're so scared of something in the environment that you can't leave your house, go to a job, come back, right, and so forth, that's a phobia. It prevents you from living out a normal life. But just labeling something a phobia isn't. I think people do a disservice to psychology when they do that, because it's not a real condition. And they make it seem like you can't have fear in life, which is absurd. Emotion is necessary for cognitive function in life. How your brain works and stores things is you have an emotional impact. It has to have a high emotional impact for it to stay with you, for your neurons to process. That's why neurons process novelty things, or things it's never encountered before. You suddenly look at it. That's how neurons work. So now our tractor's still stuck in the mud. You know, it's dry mud. So I decided to do the simple thing. Just end task and the task manager. Then we're going to pick it up on the next clip. If you've watched this long, thank you. Please like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. And we'll catch you in the next episode of the Mars Colony 2025. Thank you. Enjoy your day.